Okay, I think we got it. Thank you everyone for coming to this session tonight on unschooling. I hope to make it worth your while. This is one of my favorite topics to explore in homeschooling, and it's my passion, absolutely my passion. So I'm going to present for about 40 minutes, and then I'm going to open it up to any of your questions. Okay, so my name is Judy Arnell, and I'm certified in child development and brain development. So I have experience with the brain story and the growing brain, and it's really fueled my interest in how brains learn and into the world of education. So that was interesting. I'm also, I have in my work life done parenting. So I've taught child development, and I've written 3 books on non-punitive parenting. So when my kids first started going to school, I really had a problem with the punishment aspect of punishing kids to learn or giving them incentives to learn, like pizza coupons. It just didn't quite fit with my work or with my philosophy. I started a group called Unschooling Canada Association, and you can go there. There's lots of stuff on there. I also started a Facebook group called Unschooling STEM, just because when I entered the field of understanding unschooling, it seemed to be very heavily biased in terms of arts careers, entrepreneurship, which is fine, absolutely fine. But I had to ask myself, well, where are the kids who are into engineering and science and medical and those, more the other side of the brain type of careers? So when 4 of my 5 children leaned into STEM careers, I thought, okay, I got to start a Facebook group where we can actually talk about this. So feel free to join. I also have a blog, unschoolingtouniversity.com, and a parenting blog at judyarnell.com. And they have different articles on them if you want to know more. So, but my greatest joy in life is my 5 children who have now all graduated high school with honors. They did a self-designed high school. They did their first math class in grade 7 or 8 and skipped the rest, and then went on to high school math. They did their first science course in grade 10, their first social studies and English course in grade 11. And they did it self-designed, which means that in Alberta, there are some school authorities that offer Section 6 of the home education regulations, where children can learn what they need to know to fulfill high school outcomes, present that learning, and get high school credits on a government transcript, which gets them into STEM careers or whatever careers in universities across Canada. All the major universities across Canada do not require a diploma. They require marks in 5 grade 12 courses, 4 in the course, 1 in options. And that's what my kids did. They all got scholarships along the way, and I'm very proud of them. So in my group of unschoolers, I have an engineer, I have a biomedical kid, kid in biomedical, I have a child in chemistry, and I have a child in humanities, and I also have a child who's probably heading into a more sciencey career, finance, probably. So if you choose to unschool, you will not be closing the door on those lucrative STEM careers. Absolutely not. My 3 oldest children are very much gainfully employed all through COVID in those industries. Now, it's important to let you know, we love teachers, we love learning. We're not crazy about the system. The system is not effective in that it is a one size fits all, does not account for children who learn on their own. Absolutely not. Okay, so what's the problem right now? Children are natural learners. Despite the media telling you that children only learn at school or online, not true. Children learn from the moment they're born to the minute they're pushing up daisies. They are born learners. They love to learn about the world around them, the curiosity. They bring all of these things to their learning. And the sad part is they lose it. Sometimes between 5 and 15 in school, their curiosity, their creativity, their engagement loses it because the agenda for learning is no longer theirs. It's there from 0 to 5. It's not there after age 5. They have to learn somebody else's agenda. And hence, the worldwide dropout rate in high school is anywhere from 20% in Alberta to 40% around the world. So in Alberta, we lose 20% of our children's brains from high school. And that tells me there's an issue with our education system. It's like a brain surgeon saying, we lose 1 out of every 5 patients to death, but that's an acceptable risk. Well, to me, that's not acceptable that we lose 20% of our customers in high school. That tells me we have a problem with our education system. So what's the solution? I think, and many others who propose unschooling, think that the key is self-directed learning. It involves consent. Learners get to choose what they learn, and it involves interests. So whatever they're interested in, they get to learn about. Now, it doesn't always mean it's self-taught. Many unschoolers take on courses. They take on the school system. They take on a teacher or tutor to teach them. But the core defining point there is that they are choosing it. It is their decision to take those things on. It's nobody else's decision. And if you think that's handing too much power over to a child already owns their education. When they're little and they don't like what they're learning in school, they act out. When they're a little older, they tune out. And when they're 16 and able to, they drop out. They already are empowered to own their education. When we unschool, we just hand it over to them a bit sooner, and they embrace it. So I love this quote from Grayson Kirk. Our greatest obligation is to prepare our children for effectiveness in the world they will inherit, not the world we have known. And right now, the conveyor belt system of education, whether it's online or in a classroom, is not the effective way to educate children for the next 50 years. Children should be learning according to their interests. And what better time to do it? Content is at our fingertips in our smartphones. We just need alternative methods of learning. Now, when my children were unschooling, we didn't even have smartphones. We had the beginnings of the internet. And even there, they learned so much of what they needed to know to take that first math class in grade 8 or that first science class in grade 10. They learned it off a very, very primitive internet. So what does learning look like? You might hear in the media that children are learning at home through online courses, or they're learning in a classroom. Well, that's not true. Children learn everywhere. When they're at home at night playing a video game, they're learning. When they're listening to a podcast or watching a video on TikTok, they're learning. And it doesn't matter what they're learning, the biological process is the same. So these are neurons, which are brain cells, and the whole process of learning is one neuron sending a neurotransmitter down that axon to the axon terminal to send that neurotransmitter across to a neighboring neuron, which is the dendrite here, and make a connection. That's all learning is making those connections. Let's play this. Here we go. There's that neurotransmitter coming down the axons to the neighboring dendrites. This brain is learning. And this biological process happens whether a child is doing a math workbook or playing a video game. It's all the same process. So whether children learn in school or learn in the community, they're learning. They do it from birth and it happens all the way through adulthood. Okay, so this is what unschooling is. Unschooling is what most children do, play. It's play. It's free, unstructured, unadult controlled play. So all children are on the same plane pretty well, unless those kids go to preschool. But from 0 to 6 years old, all children play. And then at age 6, we say, okay, enough of your playing. You have to no longer learn what you want to learn. You have to learn what the government wants you to learn. So we take kids off that play agenda and we put them on a school agenda. But as you can see, the kids learn the same things, but in different ways. Children who play till age 18 still learn math. They learn to read. They learn to write. Children who go to school still learn to do math, learn to read, and learn to write. They just do it in different ways. They do it through play or they do it through school. Now, to get the credentials to go on to universities, unschoolers at about age 17, 18, 19, whenever, sometimes go the school route and either take a grade 12 course to brush up on what the exam would be, or just study for the exam, write the exam, get the marks on a government transcript, and go on to university. No problem. So there are many ways to learn science, social studies, English, and math. It's not just in one way, which is school. Okay, so students are borderless. Right now with the internet, students can learn from any course, any resource, anywhere in the world. It doesn't have to be through Alberta education. It can be anywhere. And the future is going to be proving qualifications, not proving that you showed up in class for 8 hours a day. It's proving what you know. And a lot of that in Alberta is our diploma exams in grade 12. That is proving what kids know. And it is a across the province benchmark. Children who write the diploma exams in Lethbridge write the same exam, same day as children in Fort McMurray. Same qualifications. So boundaries and regulation is much less important. Okay, so unschooling is like a buffet. And instead of, let's just picture a child standing there with a plate. And the child chooses what goes on the plate. Maybe they want broccoli, maybe they want brownies, maybe they want beans, doesn't matter. They choose. Now, in homeschooling, the parent is there telling the child what to put on the plate. In school, the government, the principals, the teachers are telling the child what to put on the plate. But in unschooling, the child decides how much and what foods to take on their plate. And that is what unschooling is like. A good definition is just freedom to learn whatever they want to learn. So in a rich, natural, stimulating environment, a child's curiosity and motivation will lead the child to know what they need to know when they need to know it. Now, self-directed education is kind of the education world's term for this, but we call it unschooling when it's done in a home, and self-directed education when it's done in a free school that is not government funded. So I'm going to tell you a bit about our story. We had 5 kids and their learning needs were not met at all 5. And as the kids went to school, they went to kindergarten, grade 1, grade 2. They would come home and we would do what I call after schooling. They really wanted to know what they wanted to know, not what the school wanted them to know. So my son would come home and say, if we planted this egg, would it grow an egg tree? And he nagged and nagged and nagged and nagged me until one day I said, okay, let's plant the egg tree. And we did. And 2 weeks later, nothing came up. So it was good. It was a good learning thing. And more we after schooled. And it got to the point where I thought, well, why are we doing the best part of our learning, the best part of the day after 4 p.m. when I'm tired? I was working. So then I decided, okay, let's pull you out. Let's homeschool. We can't do any worse than what's going on in the schools. So we went to homeschool. And by November that year, the kids stopped listening to me because I thought, okay, when you homeschool, you take school and bring it home. Everything, the workbooks, the whiteboard, the students around the kitchen table. We didn't do uniforms in recess, but we were pretty schoolish. And by November, that was not working. As you can see by one son who wrote on here, I hate mathematics. They would stop listening to me because you know what? They can. I'm safe. I'm a parent. I will love them no matter what. I am not a teacher who could fail them. So after that, more and more, we just gave up doing the workbooks, gave up the curriculum. We just played. We played for the next 10 years. Of course, I had 2 more babies, which made, things a little more chaotic, but it was fun. We played, we did projects, we did crafts, we went on field trips. It was like this summer. If you had fun this summer with your kids, it was like this summer. It was hot, it was beautiful, we did stuff. And somewhere along the way, my engineer discovered his love of mathematics because in engineering, you gotta love math. And he did. But we had to let go of the workbooks. Now, I teach parenting, so I know, and parent education, when you're teaching adult education, it's all learner-centered, not like children education. Children education is called pedagogy. Adult education is called andragogy. And they're the same things, except we assume that children need to be taught and adults don't. So I learned this in my theory of adult education. And I thought, why can't we apply this to children? The only thing children don't have is knowing that they need to know something that adults do. But it comes with age. And I've witnessed that myself now that my kids are between the ages of 19 and 30. I've seen this firsthand. It works. So my kids played, and around age 15, I said, okay, a few of you are looking pretty good in math. Do you want to head into engineering? Do you want to head into a science career? If you do, you might have to do some high school math. So they decided to do a self-designed high school program. And we registered with school boards in Alberta that offered Section 6 of the home education regulations. So we switched from the 22 solo outcomes per whenever they reach 20 to the APS outcomes for high school. And you can switch, no problem. No problem. You just check it off on your home ed form or program that's what you're doing. So what that meant is they looked at what the APS outcomes were for the courses, looked at how they could accomplish those outcomes in their own way, and then did that, and then presented their work product to a school board who would notify the government of their marks and credits, and it would be on an official government transcript. To graduate with a diploma, they had to write diploma exams, which they did, and they wrote 21 diploma exams, scored 78%. Provincial average is 65%. So self-directed education works. And then when they were off, I had 3 kids going off to university the same year. Gosh, the bills. I tell you, save up for those RESPs. But a lot of their friends did too. 25 of their friends did. And I thought, why is this information not out there? Why is this so hush hush? Well, part of the reason is the financial. It doesn't make anyone any money, but it's best for kids. So I wrote a book, all 384 pages of it, on how these 30 kids got into university and how they did and why it worked. What are the benefits of unschooling? What do they need? What does that look like at different ages? I'm giving the book away for the rest of August. So if you want a copy, you just have to pay postage, but I'll show you at the end. So of those 30 kids, we had 10 in STEM, so 4 engineers in the group, 10 went into arts, and 10 went into humanities. And at the time of the book came out, 22 graduated those post-secondary programs. And 2 are now master's students. So children do not need 16 years of formal education. They don't need 3 years of preschool and 12 years of school. They don't. Why do they get that? Because school is employment support. We got to put those kids somewhere during the day while the parents can work. And that's fair. Public schools will always be needed, but children do not always need public schools. Children need more play. There's a lot of research out there on unschooling. The most famous research is Summerhill, which is celebrating their 100th year this year. You'll probably hear about it in the news in September. This is a bit old slide. Sudbury Valley schools have been true self-directed schools, and there's 500 of those worldwide. Now, there are self-directed schools out there, but keep in mind, if they're receiving government funding, they have to meet outcomes of the Alberta programs of study. No getting away from that. So they're not true self-directed schools. They are only self-directed in terms of they allow children to set their pace. They don't allow children to decide if and what they want to learn. To do that, you have to go under home education in Alberta. The Fraser Institute has a lot of good research out there, but it's mostly focused on homeschooling, which is the parent deciding what goes on the plate. Dr. Peter Gray has done some research, good stuff, but only on 75 unschoolers. But what he found was the least structured education children had from ages 0 to 18, the more likely they would be to go on and succeed at post-secondary schools, which fits when kids are burning out. Kids who have been in 16 years of education are burning out by about grade 8. They are done with school and people telling them what they have to do to learn. But kids who only start their education in grade 8, 9, 10 are gearing up. And I've noticed that too. My kids who sneered at a math workbook at age 12 would crack a math workbook at age 15 and go at it with gusto. They were gearing up to learn high school material when it counted. And that was a good thing. Okay, so let's just quickly go through. I kind of showed you that video with the brain pathways. Okay, so here's a question. When I do this presentation, I say, okay, can a child wake up at age 17, maybe come out from their basement, they're done playing Fortnite or PUBG or whatever for the day, and they say, Dad, I want to be a doctor. Where do you start with that? Okay. Here's what you do. A doctor requires a first degree. And it could be any type of degree, but let's say biology. That's a logical one, right? It'll take 2 years preparation to get into that first degree. So the child's 17, they get funded homeschooling until age 20. They can do it, absolutely. So 3 of the grade 12 courses they need are standalone courses, which means they do not need any prior preparation for those courses. They need English 30-1, and for that they could read the key, write the exam. Practice a bit on essays. Social 30-1, same thing. Read the key, read the textbook, write the exam. Chemistry, they might need chemistry grade 11, grade 12. So that's 2 courses. Biology 30 is standalone 2, 1 course. So they read the textbook, do the questions, study the key, which is preparation for the diploma exam, write the exam. Math 30-1, they're going to need that. I would suggest they take grade 8 and then the high school math, grade 10, 11, 12. I'll talk about math in a minute. And they might need math 31, depending on what they're going into. Engineering, they might need it, but they could pick that up at university. So your 17-year-old comes up and says, I want to be a doctor, I'm passionate. Then you sit them down and say, okay, here's what you need to do. You're going to have to put 2 years prep to get in to admissions for your first degree. Are you willing to do that? If they're willing, they're going to. If they're not going to put the work in anyways. May as well wait to see where their interests lie. So unschoolers' best friends are high school textbooks and the key study guide. So anything they want to pick up from age 17, 18, 19, 20, they can pick it up. Doesn't matter if they attended math class from grades 1 to grade 8. Doesn't matter. They don't need it. So how do children develop? They develop through 4 ways. Now, this is a great graph that shows you their development of their self-control. And here's that 17-year-old just about to embark on taking 10 courses. They have a measure of self-control that a 7-year-old or a 6-year-old would not have. And they're more willing to jump through hoops in order to get what they want because they're interested in it. So babies and toddlers, babies learn to walk. We don't teach them how to walk. All of you have babies that have walked on their own development. The brain worked together. It was that cerebellum, that brainstem, all those neurons enhancing their motor control and just worked at that particular time. I had a walker at 10 months. I had a walker at 18 months. No indication of their future careers. Okay, so toddlers learn to talk. Another thing we don't teach. Learning to talk is a function of the temporal lobe and the parietal lobe and the brainstem. It just works together developmentally when they learn to talk. And then preschoolers. Preschoolers is from ages 3 to 5, and they are natural scientists. They love mud and sand and water and goop and playing in the kitchen and cake mix. They love all those things. Science is all around them. And when those preschoolers, those age 3 to 5, play with science, they're building that foundation for future studies. So when my son was 2, he would love to lie down on the floor on his stomach. And you know those door stoppers, you know, the ones that you kind of twitch and they go twang, vibrate. He'd love those. That would entertain him for hours. He'd just lie on the floor and twang, 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 twang. And then when he was 24 and in engineering class on sound oscillations, he wrote to me and he said, Mom, remember when I used to do that with the door stoppers? Well, now we're doing the theoretical basis of sound oscillations. And I'm like, yes, that experiential learning at age 2 paid off when he was 24, right? It builds. Education builds in layers. So the crucial years, when you're thinking of sending your kindergartner grade 1 to school, They have everything they need to learn in the next 6-7 years. They are natural players, and they're going to learn everything through their play, through hearing, seeing, touching, smelling, tasting, or talking. They are great players. And again, social studies is all around us in addition to science. So they may hear about a place. Right now, they're probably hearing about Afghanistan. So what do? We have a big wall map. We go to Afghanistan and show them where it is. And this is still in our house, that map, even though my kids are like 20 to 30. It's just a good reference point. So we educate children, but not through workbooks and curriculum, through life, through what happens in our daily life, what we talk about, what we value, where we take them. Most children learn to read, and we don't teach them. They happen to learn to read during about age 4 to age 7, 8. And that's when most children are in school. So we assume they learn to read through school, but that's not true. They learn to read whether they're in school or not in school, as we know from thousands of unschoolers. Reading, again, is the parietal lobe, the occipital lobe, the temporal lobe, all working together to understand the sound of symbols. And every child learns to read at a different age. It doesn't make a difference about their ability to read later on. Here's the ages my kids learned to read at: 4, 5, 8, 9, 10. Do you know who loves books the most right now? The 4, the 5, the 9, and the 10. They read like crazy. The child who learned to read at 8, he doesn't like books very much. But that may be a preference thing. He may never like books. But the other 4 kids love reading. They read novels, everything. The interesting part about this is the late reader, age 10, at what point the schools would be freaking out if he was in a classroom at that point and not reading. He, a year later, was reading books this big. So he went from Bob books, which many of you know, Bob is like Bob, see, Dick, run, to this, right? So once the brain cracks the code, then without any hangups, like they're behind or anything, it clicks, it works. Okay, let's look at writing. Okay, so all my kids were online. They didn't write much other than a letter to Santa. So they had chicken scratch. But then when they hit university, universities do not allow laptops in timed exams. They found that was a problem, as I would too. So I thought, okay, how are you going to write faster when you're timed? And this is a major exam. This is worth 40% of your mark. When the time comes, unschoolers figure out they need it. They need to learn it. So in 2 months, they went from here to here. So they got out the grade 1 cursive books and practiced for 2 months. And it was pretty good. I think they discovered the need and they went to learn it. That's what they do. Okay, let's talk about math, because math is usually a big concern of unschoolers. So kids learn math through play. Math is taught in a bad way in school. Kids are taught the solutions and the tools of math before they even have problems. They are given problems like, well, if Johnny brings 30 watermelons to a picnic and there's only 25 people, how many pieces of watermelon will everyone get? That is not relevant to a child. Absolutely not relevant. What is relevant is when they get a birthday cake from a restaurant and they look at it and think, that's not half a birthday cake. We ordered half a birthday cake. I think we got ripped off. So that's relevant. And that is a teachable moment when you say, okay, well, you know what? There's a mathematical formula for that. Let's figure it out. Did we get ripped off? So we used pi to apply to the cake. And we determined that, yes, there was about an inch of diameter missing from that cake, in which we could go back to the restaurant and say, we got less than half a cake. What are you going to do about it? So math is everywhere around us, solving everyday problems. And you have a better job teaching math around kids using everyday problems, using teachable moments that they can really see the relevancy of what you're teaching. So back to this, kids learned all these things. So tell me, those of you who've had kids who are 5 years old and went to kindergarten or grade 1, I bet you your kids knew shapes, colors before they got to grade 1. And I bet they knew how to add things before grade 1. And they sure knew how to estimate when their siblings got a bigger piece of cake by grade 1. And that is math. They learned it through play and living. So I have more about this in the book on ways to learn math without a workbook. And I talk about all the ways they can learn these things through games, through videos, through fun things. For example, my kids learn Roman numerals by reading the Asterix and Obelix books. This is a good depiction of algebra. There's x squared plus 4x plus 3, right there, real life. Now, when children achieve the age of 13, their brains really develop that prefrontal cortex, which is where they learn critical thinking. You probably hear this all over the place now. They learn to plan, problem solve. Their critical cognitive thinking skills are really expanding so that they're able to learn about things they can't see or touch theoretically. So they're understanding theories, ideologies, formulas, math concepts they can't see, but they can analyze. That's a good time for paper math. So I found grade 8 in Alberta was that pivotal bridge from mental math to paper math. In grade 8, they cover everything: fractions, decimals, ratio, rate, variables, algebra, geometry, everything they need for high school math is covered in grade 8. Now, do they start from grade 1 when they start in grade 8? No. They have learned 8 grades of math by the time they get to grade 8 through play, not through workbooks, through play. So they're not starting from grade 1, but they're starting from an attitude of inquiry, inquisitiveness, that they want to learn how to do fractions on paper, or they want to learn how to look at coordinate planes on paper. They want to do polynomials on paper because they've never done it before. And it's a good grade to get from that experiential learning of math to paper figuring it out in math. And then most of my kids just did one math course in junior high, either grade 7, grade 8, skipped grade 9, went on to grade 10, 11, 12 math, especially the STEM careers. In grade 10, high school, they can learn the Pythag, algebra, calculus, trigonometry, integers, scientific method. Those are all things that need a more theoretical understanding. And they get it faster because the brain is ready. That frontal lobe, prefrontal cortex is ready to learn those things and absorb them quite quickly. So this prefrontal cortex, so the brain develops from the bottom to the top, from the back to the front in every child across the world. And this is the last part to develop. So that is why unschoolers can play at home until age 15 and then do a self-designed high school and learn everything they need to learn in high school to go on to post-secondary. Okay, I know we're running out of time. So I kind of covered this where teenagers can learn. Okay, I got to show you this. So this is my 18-year-old. Took grade 8 math, skipped grade 9. Grade 8 was first math course, as all my kids. So He did math 10 and 11 when he was 18. And you can see he's not very practiced in writing numbers, right? All my kids have been online. They don't do math in printing. So his numbers are really not lined up. And if you don't line up your numbers in math, you make mistakes. And he figured that out in the first week on his own. And that's the beauty of unschooling is nobody points out mistakes. They get it. They can understand it and they self-teach. And there's no shame involved because nobody's pointed it out to them, but they have corrected them. This is his numbers after 60 days, so 2 months. Much, much better. And it even looks better in the grade 11 course. So when they need to do it, it comes. It absolutely comes. But we have to trust that. And that's the hardest part. Okay, so I think I've covered everything. Knowledge acquired on a need-to-know time frame as determined by the child, not by anyone else. That was our experience too with lessons and classes. My kids all wanted to take music at about age 7, 8. Signed them up for lessons. After 3 months, hated it, nagged them, nagged them to practice, wasted my money, and said, nope, I think we'll stop until you beg me 3 times. And when they were 15, 16, 17, one wanted to take violin, one guitar, one piano. They begged me. They said, Mom, we want to take lessons. So I said, okay, here's what you have to do. And I wrote the checks and drove them, and they committed to them for 2 years. It was much more appropriate. Did they lose any steam when they started at 17? Not a chance. Not a chance. Okay, now some things. So, okay, unschooling is. What is unschooling? It's self-directed education, but the child determines the pace, what they learn, content, delivery, timing, assessment. Everything's within the child's control. It is facilitator attentiveness to attended needs. So unschooling is not really homeschooling. Homeschooling is the classroom bringing it home. Although in Alberta, unschooling is under home education. You cannot unschool with teacher directed, with print-based, with online. Doesn't work. Unschooling is not permissive. A parent or adult acts as an attentive mentor or facilitator that provides resources for the learner when they indicate interest. Permissiveness is inattentive neglect, and that's not unschooling. And it's not well researched yet, just because unschoolers, like a lot of homeschoolers, detest standardized testing because it only measures a certain curriculum. And it is not uneducated. There's that myth out there that children who unschool don't learn. They learn as much or more as children in structured learning environments, but get to go deep into subject matter, and it sticks because they're motivated. So how do you unschool? You just provide unstructured time and you offer resources. It's that easy. Super easy. Super, super easy. What do kids do all day? Well, they read, research, play, they game, they do chores, they travel, they go on field trips, they may cook or bake, they do crafts, they do projects, they volunteer, and when they're older, they may run a business. Now, university, no problem. Like I said, you do not need a diploma to go to any universities in Canada. In the book, I outline about 14 ways that children who are unschooled get into post-secondary. I'm not going to go through them today, but basically what they need is 5 courses at grade 12 level, and they can present outcomes for those courses. A lot of other unschoolers just take a year of community college and then transfer into a degree program. Okay, I covered this a bit. So talked about that. I'm not going to talk too much about play. Okay, so let's talk about practical things. Education plan. How do you fill out a plan of possible activities you're going to do when you have no idea. You're going to just take a day at a time. Well, put something in there. Put activities that you hope you will get to, such as, let's say for phys ed, you want to go for walks in the park. Put that in there. For English, put down that you're going to read to your child every night. Doesn't matter if they're 14. You're going to read Lord of the Rings. For math, put down as needed to solve everyday problems. Super easy. Keep it vague, 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 vague. Tell your facilitator you're an unschooler. And then what we unschoolers do is we use the same education plan every year. We fill it out once, send it in every year. And whether we get to those things or not, doesn't matter, because this plan is a work in progress. You can change it anytime. Let's say suddenly it's Christmas and your daughter wants to rebuild her computer. So then you file a new plan and you say, hey, under section J and O, we're gonna buy computer parts. She needs a new processor. So you put that in, you get to fund it for reimbursement, send in the ed plan, you're done. So it's super, super easy. For assessment, you do not have to put down exams or tests of any kind. All you put down is observation, which means that you saw it. Maybe you took a picture of it. That's it. That is super, super easy. Okay, so I'm not going to really talk about high school. Let's talk about common concerns, and maybe they'll come up in Q&A. Common societal myths that you're going to get out there from families and naysayers is kids need adults to occupy their time. No, they don't. Once you hand over their time to them, they get used to occupying their own time. It's a myth that we have to spoon feed and entertain children every second of the day. That's what schools do. That's not what homeschoolers do. Learners need teachers more than facilitators? No, they don't. They need, sometimes, yeah, I'll grant you, there are times, maybe grade 11 math 20-1, a child needs a teacher or a tutor, absolutely, but not for grade 3, not for grade 5. They can learn all those things themselves in their own time. There are educational resources and junk resources? Nope. You tell those school boards that there is no such thing as educational Lego versus Lego. Tell them that the brain connects whether they're playing educational Lego or normal Lego. And same with gaming. Whether they're playing board games or video games, the brain sends the same neurotransmitters down those axons to the dendrites. Learning and socialization can only occur in school. Nope. Play is frivolous and time wasting. Play serves a huge purpose and it's very educational. Early education and more of it is good? No, research shows that it's not. It's actually the opposite. Kids won't learn a work ethic if not trained early. That was one I really worried about. I thought, okay, if my teenager sleeps in till 2 p.m., how will they ever get up for a university class at 8 a.m. or a job at 6 a.m.? And you know what? Like everything else in unschooling, when the time comes that they need to do something, they do it. It's the same in parenting. It's a myth that we have to train kids early, prepare kids early. Total myth. When they need to do it, that is when you do it. Now, yeah, it may involve a little boot camp and a little bit of grumbling as they get their sleep schedule back, but they can do it. Just as we can accommodate to jet lag, takes us a week, they can accommodate to anything new. And the last one here is kids won't learn the basics. Yes, they do. Kids have too much power. Well, kids already own their education. We just don't acknowledge it. Children who are not engaged in school, when they're young, they act out. When they're older, they tune out. And when they're able to at 16, they drop out. We have to acknowledge that we're not meeting their needs. Okay, will there be gaps in their education? Now, children who go to an online school or classroom school have gaps in their education. The school has to pick and choose certain topics. Social studies and science are all location specific. Same with art and phys ed, which means that a child in Alberta is not getting the same education as a child in Saskatchewan. But it doesn't matter. The only constants in learning is English and math. That's it. Everything else is location specific. So whether there's gaps, when a child needs to fill that gaps, they'll get it. They will get that education. So for example, in school, kids learn about Peru in grade 3. They learn about Japan in grade 6, Brazil in grade 8. Well, what if they don't want to learn about Brazil or Japan or Peru? What if they want to learn about France and Russia and China? Well, why can't they? Because the school's not deciding for them, right? So every child will have gaps, but a lot of those gaps will be filled in when they need it. A good example I use is how many of us had formal lessons in sexuality, and yet we all know how to procreate. So it's there. Okay, so this is kind of, languages. Again, would kids miss out if they're not learning languages? And again, my experience with my kids is they learned French, Latin, and German by traveling, by doing university internships in those countries. That was the best way to learn language. Not French immersion. They dropped out of French immersion in that first grade 1. They learned it through living there, and everybody can learn a language at any time. Yes, it's a bit more challenging when, you're connecting these brain cells when you're a bit older, but it's certainly doable. Absolutely doable. The advantages of unschooling, I list about 61 in my book, but I'm not going to cover them here. Big one is motivation is never a problem. The child's always developmentally ready for the material. There's no learning anxiety because there's no pressure. And the child understands rather than memorizes. This is my son. We went to the Vietnam War Museum, and he got to understand the effects of Agent Orange during the Vietnam War. And there were pictures of kids his age on the wall. That was so much more meaningful to him than a textbook in a social studies high school class. Kids learn how to access information, develop independence, and there's no lesson plans. It's super easy on the parents. We just get them whatever they want to learn about, whatever, depends on them. There's no power struggles between the child and the teacher, and they love learning for its intrinsic value rather than pizza coupons. They enhance their creativity, their initiative, decision-making, and all learning styles are respected. Okay, there's a few disadvantages. Interests erupt at inconvenient times, like my son who wanted to plant an egg tree at 10 o'clock at night. And I said, no way, I'm too tired. Let's do it tomorrow. Cost may be a barrier. And the big one is learning is difficult to measure. And that can make us distrustful. We have to unschool ourselves too and realize that all children learn everywhere, all the time, not just in school. And it's invisible. That's what makes it hard to trust that those children's brains are always working. Okay, last 5 minutes is what if they play video games all day? Yeah, they're gonna. I think all my kids love video games. Loved it. They played way too many hours, maybe sometimes up to 12 hours a day. But they're all in 4 out of 5 are in STEM careers. And I believe those video games help them in their STEM pursuits. Are video games addictive? No. Are they compelling? Yes. Research shows that children who grow up in nurturing family environments do not have that impaired prefrontal cortex from toxic stress from adverse childhood experiences. And if they don't have that, they do have executive function in order to say, no, I can't play a video game right now. I got to study for my university exam. they have that self-control and ability to put it on hold. And that's not an addiction. So no matter how many hours children have screen time, it is not an addiction unless they have adverse childhood experiences and trauma in their childhood. Now, we can help their development with having conversations with them, making sure they get language, having tech-free times for kids and adults, making sure they get exercise, some sociable meal times, and healthy sleep hygiene practices. Okay, and look what they learn from video games: cooperation, commitment, teamwork, critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, innovation. And like I said, that self-control goes way up in that 17 to 25 year. So they have the ability by then to put the games on hold and do something else. Okay, let's conclude. So just to conclude, that your child, by 1 year, they learn to walk on their own. By 3 years, they learn to talk. By 7 years, they learn to read, to print, to do arithmetic, to learn the times table without direct instruction. They learn to keyboard all on their own. It's self-taught. By 13 years, they learn to write, do mathematics, code, learn spreadsheets, game modding. They learn all kinds of really interesting things by themselves. And by 15 to 20 years, they're ready for more formal instruction, whether it's from a teacher or whether it's self-taught. Absolutely ready for more theoretical instruction. So can play replace school? You bet it can. Absolutely. I'm going to end with this poem, and then I'd like to open it up for questions. I love this poem. It's by Anonymous, but it's, I tried to teach my child with words. They often passed him by unheard. I tried to teach my child with books. He only gave me puzzled looks. Despairingly, I turned aside. How can I teach this child? I cried. Into my hand, he placed the key. Come, he said, and play with me. Isn't that sweet? Kids learn through play, and that's what unschooling is. Okay, so I have Unschooling to University books. If you want your free copy, if you're in Alberta, please feel free to e-transfer me $20 for Canada Post to my email address there. And I would be happy to pop one in the mail, and you can have your copy. So thank you so much for coming tonight and sharing this hour with me. And I would be so happy to answer all your questions. I'm going to end it here. And thank you. Okay, there's some really good relevant questions here that I think people need to be aware about of unschooling in Alberta. First of all, you do not need to let your facilitator know that you are unschooling. You can, it probably helps for the school authority to assign someone who is familiar with unschooling and gets it and will support it. So you don't have to tell them, but you might want to. And again, unschooling is a method of homeschooling. So when you fill out your ed plan and you put down your activities, you can say, we are unschoolers, activities will be planned as they come up, right? So it gets you kind of off the hook there. Yes, you get funding for unschooling. You get the same amount because it's home education. So you're entitled to the $850 per child that everybody else gets. Absolutely. Unschooling is totally legal in Alberta. It's a method of home education, and parents know best how their children learn. Absolutely. It's totally covered. What do unschoolers buy with funding? They buy things like board games, microscopes, sewing machines, cameras, internet access, baking, cooking ingredients, video games, books, everything. You can buy things secondhand as long as you make out a receipt for that. It's all coverable under Alberta education. I would say when you're coming from a homeschooling school approach, to move into unschooling, to help you with your doubts, definitely spend the first month observing your child learning. Maybe record things, take pictures of things. That is what's going to build your confidence that they are learning all the time. You actually have to observe your children and see how much they learn without being taught. That, and bits by bits, it builds. And by the time your children are 13 and super capable, you are amazed at how much they can teach themselves. For example, all 5 of my kids have built themselves gaming computers from parts. I know nothing about computers other than HTML, but nothing about hardware. And I didn't teach them. Nobody taught them except they looked up videos on YouTube and taught themselves. We have to leave ourselves open to that way of thinking that our children are going to exceed what we know and what their teachers know, and are going to learn whatever they need to learn for the future. It's not, we don't contain all the knowledge. They're going to get the knowledge. So yeah, we do have to retrain our brains. Absolutely. Okay, so if you want to find more information, you just follow the first steps on Alberta homeschooling.ca website. And same thing, just follow those steps for fall entry into home education. And then on your education plan, just write down that you're unschooling, and your facilitator will help you with that. Absolutely. So here's an example of an unschooling family's weekly structure. Did we have structure? Yes, we did. Because just like people who are retired, they have a rhythm and structure to their week. So for us, Monday night was always library night. We, as a whole family, would go to the library, get out a ton of books, and come home. And guess what? Everybody read. By Tuesday, they didn't do that, right? So then Tuesday was field trip day. So we would have planned things on Tuesday. Wednesday would have been a play group day, or oftentimes a lesson day. So they would go to a lesson that they wanted to do. Thursdays, I would work, so they'd be on their own. Fridays would be homeschool days. So we would get together with other homeschoolers at the park day or at the local gym and do things with them. Saturday would be our day to do chores. Saturday night was date night. Sunday was family day. So we would play board games or invite another family over. So we did have a rhythm and a structure to our week. What we didn't have in our week was we have to get through 2 weeks of homeschooling a day, right? For bookwork, we didn't have that. So the filler between all the structured things were the kids would play. They'd video game, they'd make something, they'd play Lego, they'd read something. Whatever they did in between our non-negotiable things was on their own. So they had a lot of free time, a lot of time to explore whatever they wanted to do. Sometimes they were bored and they would come to me and say, "Mom, I'm bored." And I'd say, "Well, the floor needs a scrub." And then they would go off and bug their sibling or do something. So, but it works. We do have structure because we're human beings. We like structure. So it's not like it's a free for all. It does have structure. Okay. Thanks everybody for joining me, and feel free. I got a lot of articles on unschoolingtouniversity.com, and yes, give it a go. You know what? It's for a year. What the heck, right? Children can take, if unschooled kids can take 10 years off education and start at high school, you could take 1 year and not hurt your child at all. No worries. So it can be fine. So don't worry. But thanks for joining me, and we'll talk to you soon.